All of the food we eat and much of the clothing we wear comes from plants and animals that are raised on farms. Farms are different in type, in size, and even in name.
Welcome to Barn Talk. What happens at the barn stays at the barn until us two knuckleheads came along. Then it's just, we're going to let it all out for you guys now. It's all out there. All we ask for you guys to do, if you get value from the show, is just share it out. Share it with your family, share it with your friends, share it with your coworkers. We're trying to grow this thing. We're trying to reach as many people as possible. We're trying to give people some value, do some good in this world. So if you get some value, it's all we ask.
And if you feel like you got some value, send some snacks. I always like snacks. I'm out at the bag of cookies is empty. I had a bag of cookies in the freezer.
We need like a trough. We need like a trough up here with a bunch of snacks. We got M&Ms, Chex Mix, all kinds of stuff.
We
like a bird feed, like a chicken feeder.
We need a rotary hog feeder. We need a big old round hog feeder. I don't know, mess up the camera.
It might mess up the camera.
It'll mess up the shot. I probably don't need any snacks. I'm trying to thin down. Yeah. My brother's on a diet. My oldest brother's on a diet.
He looks pretty good.
Yeah, he's getting thin. I'm kind of getting nervous because I've always kind of been able to stay ahead of those two because I actually have to move and do things, and he's a salesman, so it's easy to get fat and sassy when you're a salesman. But I don't know. He's kind of upped his game.
He's kicking your butt now.
Yeah, he's eating healthy. All I can do, I think...
You just gotta Matt feed some more pigs, I guess.
Well, that and the wife has taken to walking. We've been going to the track and walking, and I think we're going to stick on that because I think she's feeling it too, that there's some pressure. We got to stay.
Are you wanting to give the market update?
Yes. So the Friday edition market update, sponsored by nobody, courtesy of Cat's Grain.
Shout out Cat's Grain. That's where we get our numbers.
So the river getting screwed up, and I don't know what all's going on. It can only run so long, and then they got to run it the other way. But so the top was in, and I think we're working back off of that. I don't know what. We're supposed to get rain this weekend. It looks like next week's going to be rainy, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. It depends on whether you need it. I feel like we've got plenty of moisture, but we're probably going to get
rain
more.
Makes grain, but we need some damn sun too.
Well, that's right, because it has not been. We were just talking about that we've been complaining about how we're going to have to shoot this podcast early in the morning or late at night, and everybody's going to have to wear their swim trunks because it's going to be so hot. But here we are, and it's the middle of May, and we're still up here with our sweatshirts on, so we haven't hit the hot weather yet.
We haven't hit the hot weather yet, but it's definitely been cold up here.
The corn's up, and it looks better. It's greened up, but it doesn't look like this week is going to have much heat, so I don't know. It's just going to hang out, I guess, till we start getting the heat units. But, yeah, one thing a little strange in our neck of the woods that doesn't usually happen is, so the close today, you could get $6.83 for corn if you hauled it to the feed mill, and only like $6.68 hauling it to the river. So that just tells you that they're grinding a lot of feed for these pigs, and so they got a better bid than they do at the river. The bean price though is $15.97, and that's at ADM in Burlington. And if you go across the river, it's $16.17.
What's new corn? What's the price on that?
It's probably dropped back off. It's probably like $5.65 or something like that.
Did you lock anything in?
No, I didn't.
Oh,
it came close.
You said you were getting itchy.
Well, it was five. I think it got to like $5.97. You could deliver new crop corn to one of the hog feeders for $5.97. Don't comment. I don't need the abuse, but I didn't. I said, well, if
it'll
it gets
higher,
it'll get to $6. You put those little ideas in your head. Well, if it just gets to this, and then it didn't get there. Or if it did get there, it wasn't there long enough that when I checked it, it was. And so
it's still kind of early though.
Yeah, I feel like not much has changed. Mm-hmm. It's a demand deal because the ending stocks. I mean, it's not like we're going to find more corn before harvest. It's all just speculation on
how much we're going to produce.
Yeah, how we can outproduce ourselves.
Which we will.
Yeah, we'll be able to do that. Hogs are high, $108 a hundredweight. Cattle are still high. I think cattle are, what is that? That's a 115. And feeder cattle are like 138. So commodities are high. That game, not much has changed.
Bitcoin's in the shitter.
Oh man, Bitcoin. Bitcoin's about 48,000 right now, and I don't know. There's just a lot of people yapping that need to be quiet, and I don't think people can decide what they're going to do. But,
Elon just needs to shut up.
Well,
he keeps getting on Twitter talking about Doge and Bitcoin, and
I think
it's affecting his Tesla stock. It's affecting Doge, and it's affecting Bitcoin. He needs to just shut up.
Well,
but I think he likes it a little bit.
I think he does.
He likes being able to. I don't know what his game is. I feel like he's got an end game, but it's hard to see what his end game even is on that.
I think on part of that stuff, I don't think that he really has. I think there's a little. He works so much that I don't feel like he has much of a. He doesn't have much of a social life. I don't think. And Twitter is kind of like his out. And I think
his hobby.
I think he just likes to throw stuff out there and see if it sticks. But sometimes people read an awful lot into what he says, and then
blow it out of proportion.
It takes on a life of its own. Yeah. But yeah, and Ethereum. We haven't really talked much about Ethereum. Ethereum's kind of like the
second most popular crypto. It
yeah, I mean,
depends who you talk to.
It depends on who you talk to. So Ethereum is a whole different deal. You know, it's not if Bitcoin is the gold of crypto, Ethereum is kind of like
it's like the train tracks all the other altcoins run on.
Yeah,
it's like the internet.
Yeah,
it's literally like the internet of crypto. All these other coins are getting built on Ethereum.
Yeah. If you're a guy, if there's an NFT, and we won't go into NFTs because that'll really send us off. But
yeah, I still don't know.
If you're wanting to buy digital art or digital anything,
tokens or whatever,
Ethereum is what that runs on. Anyway, Ethereum has been on a big run. It got up to like 4,000, and I think it's about 3,800 or 3,600 or something like that. So anyway, that's about.
We got a lot of stuff done the last couple of weeks. We got all our corn in, got all our beans in, everything's planted.
Yeah. So now if we get some sun and this corn will take off, which I'm sure it will, it'll be time to side dress. And one thing that we're doing different this year, because, you know, I'd love to sell fertilizer, because if you have a bad year, you've got to use fertilizer because you need every bushel you can. And if the markets are good, well,
you better just give it everything it needs.
Yeah, you need every bushel you can. So there's really no scenario that your fertilizer dealer isn't smiling. So anyway, they're putting the pitch on everybody this year. But one thing that we struggle with, and I think a lot of people struggle with, is corn on corn. We grow a third of our acres are beans, a third of it is corn on that bean ground, and then a third of it is corn on corn. And the reason we do that is because we have all this hog manure that is really good fertilizer, and we hate to just give it away to people. So we raise corn on corn, but corn on corn can be a struggle. And last year it really was a struggle. We turned off dry, and it looked really good, but that dry weather,
everybody last year, like first, I don't know what, 2 months, everyone was like, oh yeah, this looks good. And then it just did not look good.
I kind of had my head in the sand because all my corn looked really good. And one day my farm credit rep stopped by, and we were talking, and he's like, boy, this corn's tough, man. It's really starting to, I got corn that's firing. And I said, really? I said, man, my corn looks good. It's really holding up good. And then like 2 days later, it just hit.
Crap.
I mean, it just hit, and it really took a toll.
Everybody had that.
But anyway, one of the things we're doing this year that we haven't done in the past is we're paying a lot more attention to micro
soil health.
Yeah, well, I feel like we've always done that, but a lot of these micronutrients. So boron, zinc, manganese, I don't know what else, sulfur. And I mean, we've addressed the sulfur a little bit, but this year we're going to put what they call a micro pack in with our side dress. And then we're probably going to split that side dress up. Typically, if we come back and spray fungicide, we don't go and do another nitrogen. We don't put any nitrogen on later. And this year we may do that. I don't know. We haven't decided 100%. But anyway.
We put calcium in every time, BioCal. Yeah. But this time we're putting boron in. What did you say? What else?
Well, it's a micro pack. Has boron, has manganese, has zinc.
Has everything, all the micros you need.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
All I had to say was to my fertilizer guy, I'm like, what about boron? He's like, oh, you need it. You're short. Guaranteed you're short. Nobody ever talks about it because nobody's got any money, but I do it this year. I got it. I got a micro pack. I got it. Don't worry about it. Yep, I'll put it in there.
That's the hardest thing about this soil health. And, I think every farmer or a lot of farmers believe that, if you get your soil health right, you get your micronutrients right, you get the nitrogen right, you get all that stuff right, obviously your yield's going to be great. But you got to find the balance of how much you're going to spend up front versus what are you going to get for it.
Well, and
and people don't get that. Everybody wants all these farmers to be environmental friendly all the way through as much as they possibly can, but they don't realize that stuff's it's not cheap. It's expensive.
Well, and what's right one year isn't right the next. And we used to put on part of our nitrogen with the planter beside the row, and then we used pop-up. And we kind of got away from that. One, for the speed of planting, because
you had to fill up all the time.
Yeah, you can get it on. You can get everything planted quicker. But then the other thing was, it seemed like, and this year would be the same way, you put that nitrogen out there, and then we get rain and rain and rain and rain, and you feel like you're losing it. Like if it's moving in the soil faster than that corn's going down, you feel like you're chasing your tail a little bit. And so we went away from that, and we don't put it on with the planter, and then we come back and we side dress more, and then we may give it a shot, either when we put on fungicide, or we may come back in between and do another application of nitrogen. And so, the goal is to get as much yield as you can with as little input as you can. So spend the least amount of money and get the most yield. And
do the right practices that are good for the environment.
Yeah.
It's like you got to balance all three of those things.
Yeah.
It's not as easy as everybody from the outside in. If you're not a farmer, they're like, oh, yep, you got to do this because it's good for the environment. But they're not in our shoes. They don't get it.
Yeah. And a side note on that, anybody that points their fingers at farmers about over-implying fertilizer, just take a drive around your neighborhood and see those vibrant yards. I will about guarantee you that there is more nitrogen runoff per acre from people over-fertilizing their yards than there is from farmers. I mean, the amount of fertilizer that gets wasted to make grass green it's insane. But everybody's patch is just tiny, and you're just putting on a half a bag here and a half a bag there. But when you've got as many yards as there are across the United States, it would boggle your mind to know how much nitrogen runoff comes from. And then that all goes into the city sewer and goes to the treatment plant, and then the treatment plant, they have to get all that out of there before they can discharge it. We've all got problems as far as that goes. It's not one answer.
That's kind of you've had that take for a while. I remember I haven't heard you say that in a long time, but I don't think a lot of people even think about that, honestly.
Well, here's another perfect, and this is a little bit off of that fertility, but it's not. For me to apply the manure out of my hog buildings, which is as far as manure goes, pig manure is very pure. The only thing that's in that is the byproducts of the corn, the bean meal, the salt you put in the feed, and whatever vitamin pack that you give the pigs, and the water they drink. And all that manure that goes in the pit comes from that constantly same diet, and let's just say that if I have to work on a piece of manure application equipment, I don't worry too much about that. But if I was the guy that was pumping the city sewer pond out, I think I'd probably have a hazmat suit on for doing that because Lord only knows what's in there. But, okay, I have to have a manure management plan that tells the state of Iowa where every gallon of that manure is going and what I'm going to apply it at and what my crop yield is. And basically they want it accounted for, and they want to know who applied it, when they applied it. You're supposed to write down the weather conditions, and that's all on record. And if it's too wet in the fall and I can't apply that, then I wait and I apply it in the spring. And when I build that building, part of the reason that that pit is the size as it is you need to be able to go a year. You need to be able to store a year's worth of manure just in case weather conditions aren't fit, that you can't get it all pumped or you couldn't get any of it pumped. Okay, and I don't know whether other states are different than the state we live in, but every spring you get times where there's a lot of rain and there's some rivers that flood, and you know that if you are a small town or a big town and you get a massive amount of water and it inundates your municipal sewer treatment plant and you can't process that raw sewage fast enough, all you do is call up the DNR and they just start pumping it. They just start pumping it right over the levee, right out of the pond, right in the river. And they do that because they don't have any choice. That's what they have to do. Okay, if my pit got full and I had a broken water line and I called the DNR and I said, well, my pit's full, I'm just going to start pumping this, I'm not sure what would happen to me, but I'm pretty sure that I would get the book thrown at me. There is a huge amount of poor publicity. I feel like we're shown in a poor light for the way we use the resource we have, because we actually use that manure to fertilize our crops. That runs through a city, that's treated, and then the water is discharged in the river. But if they have a problem, they can't do anything else.
They just dump it in the river.
Yeah, they don't. I mean, they have to, and I realize that they have to.
There's no repercussions for
right.
anybody.
There
they can't trace anything back.
Oh,
That's
no,
the other thing. They can't trace it back to anybody. But if it's a farmer, if it's a single farmer, then it's your fault. So
they're going to do their best to trace it. Which I'm not saying that we should be out dumping it in the river, and we're not, and nobody is, and we're trying to do our best. But it's like the amount of fertilizer that gets put on people's yards that run off, that ends up nitrates in the water that's in the river, the amount of raw sewage that comes from municipalities that goes in the rivers around the world versus the amount of pollution that comes from the American farmer, it's not even close. And yet we have to do a better job of explaining what we do and why, and we have to defend ourselves. But I don't feel like it's an even plan.
Yeah, I would totally agree. That's an interesting take, because like I just have not heard that from really anybody. I've heard you talk about that before, and I remember thinking like that's true, because everybody does. Everybody looks at their yard. Yeah. Like if you live in the city, and we treat our yard the same way. It's like a I don't know, it's a pride thing. You want your yard to look good, and some people go all out. They fertilize it. They do all the things that they need to do to it, and it's like we do not fertilize ours. No.
I enjoy mowing in the spring, and then I like it when it's green, and I actually don't even spray it. There's some people that spray it, spray their yard 2,4-D to take care of the dandelions and everything. We just mow tall, and I don't get too bent out of. I don't get too hyped up about it.
Well, there's so much for us to mow that
there is. But I had a guy call me from like a national lawn care service, and he was cold calling people, and he said, do you want, we're trying to sell me a services, and I said I'm not interested, and he said, but this time of year, he goes, don't you want that yard to stay green? And this is like July, and I'm already tired of mowing. I'm like, no, I want that thing to die. I want it dead. I don't want to have to mow anything. I'm fine. Right. Anyway, he didn't quite understand that, but anyway.
So that's all the crop side of things on our farm. We sold some pigs. We're selling out of my barn right now. We're selling more pigs. I think we're selling 3 more loads on next Friday. And we've been working on cleaning up the home farm a little bit. Dad's been tearing down these old raggedy hog buildings that Grandpa Lawrence built back in 80s.
Oh no, 70s.
70s, and they're pretty much shot, and we just need to tear them down. They're not usable, and
they're pretty well gone. There's one left that's still standing, but our first hog confinement was built in 1971, same year I take that back. I think that one was built. I think that one might have been built in 70, and then we built one in 74 and 75, and then we had one building that burnt in 83 maybe that we rebuilt. But it's time for them to go, and we've had people tear them down, and then they left all the stuff.
They took all the good stuff that they could use, and then they left all the stuff that they couldn't use.
So we're down to getting rid of the concrete and the junk that's left. We got a roll-off dumpster out there, and we're gonna get the stuff that we can't recycle, I guess, and then we're gonna push all the concrete out. And I don't think we're gonna grind it. I think we're probably just gonna bury it.
And I bet money on that. We're going to have that whole process of us cleaning up the home farm on This Will Do Farm YouTube channel if you want to watch it.
Yeah, it will be. Channel. It'll be out there. Yeah. So,
but that whole idea of cleaning up the home farm, we've been thinking about the future. We want to better our farm, and we're thinking further down the line. And I think that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to be talking about the future, what we see in our crystal ball as far as the ag economy or agriculture, and just the rest of the world. Well, how we view it, where do we see the world going? And we're going to start with the hog business first.
Yeah.
So,
when you look at tearing down these buildings, I grew up and we had 160 sows, fair to finish. I mean, when my dad started and built this barn, I think he had two groups of 40 sows that he farrowed. But anyway, then first he had 120 sows, and then he had 160, and then we got to where we had about 240, and then we got out of the hog business, and then we ended up getting into custom feeding. And so these are the remnants of the past. And as we sit today, if you would have asked me in 2010 when I built my first wean to finish barn for contract feeding, I would have never guessed that we'd have 4 of them today. And I also probably wouldn't have thought that the business would be as consolidated as it is. I guess I don't know that. There certainly has been a lot of consolidation, but I think one thing...
What do you mean consolidation? Just the amount of people in it?
Fewer and fewer people that are actually farrowing sows.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is just because the volatility. When back in the 80s and the 90s and even the 70s, you grew your own corn and you ground it and you fed it, and basically the pigs were a way to add value to that crop. You essentially were getting a better price for that corn crop. And there's guys today that are still, they own shares in a sow unit, and then they feed their own pigs, and they're feeding their own corn, and they're adding value to that crop. But the swings that we've seen, and we talked about going through COVID, the amount of money that some of these guys took in loss, there's some that have gotten out they're not coming back. That's not coming back. But the other thing is, as we talked about, there isn't a lot of expansion. And the reason is because
the swings are too big.
And the future is very uncertain. Mm-hmm. And it's not just market wise. I think there's just a lot of uncertainty about what are we going to do as far as labor.
Yeah, that's something that not a lot of people understand. It's like in our business, hog farming, all this, I mean, just agriculture in general, there's not a lot of young people like me that are coming up. I mean, fewer and fewer people, fewer and fewer farm kids. I mean, if you're a farm kid, it's about a 50-50 shot if you're going to stay on the farm. I mean, I feel like fewer farm kids are staying back and actually working on the farm. And then on top of that, there's people, it's not required for people to take ag classes. I mean, you can't get young people to want to farm if they know nothing about farming. And if you're not from Iowa, Nebraska, the Midwest, you're probably not going to learn about farming. And you're probably not, if you're not even going to willing to try it, it's not in your family, why would you take an ag class anyway? I mean,
farmers today, not all the way, but I feel like a lot of times we're a good punching bag for you name it. We're not painted in a very good light, and I think there's a lot of misconceptions because people perceive large farmers as somehow they are inherently evil. If you're a big farmer, well, you don't give a rat's tail about anything, and you're just a greedy, whatever. Mm-hmm. And everybody wants to think about. They've got this poetic picture of this small farmer standing out, hoeing his field, whatever. Well, the ag business is no different than the rest of the world economy in the fact that whether you own a restaurant, whether you own a trucking company, whether you own a grocery store, whether you own a shoe store, dress store, candle shop, coffee shop, there's competition everywhere. But not only competition, but there's a lot of things that you can't control, and one of those is the cost of
entry.
Yeah, the cost of entry, which keeps getting higher. Land prices, I don't know.
It's hard to get in if you don't have a lot of money, and it's hard to stay in if you don't have a lot of money.
Yeah, and the staying in, that's what's caused these farms to get bigger and bigger. And I mean, let's just be honest. Our farm here, we farm roughly a little over 400 acres is what we actually farm. I think we own about 480 or 500 acres. But of what is tillable, it's about 420 acres. And there's no way that I would have still been farming, and there's probably no way that my father would have been able to stay farming if it wasn't for the fact that I built that first hog building and then kept building them, because the income off those hog buildings gave me the ability, it gave us the fertilizer, but then it gave me the ability to have some extra income that I could help take care of my parents as they got older and be able to raise my kids and be able to patch up everything that needed to be fixed. And basically, those buildings are what has kept us going. And now, fortunately, we're to the point where, because I got those buildings, you can afford to build a building because you've got the income.
And I had something to do. I wouldn't have came back if you wouldn't have built them.
Right.
There wouldn't have been another generation if you wouldn't have built them.
No. And that's a story, because it hasn't been very long ago that you could build a hog building and the building would pay its own way, but it would also give the person
that's choring
it
a decent income,
a little bit of money that they'd probably have to have some part-time jobs, but they could make it work. Well, now then, the cost of entry on even that, and lumber hasn't helped and everything else, but it's so high that unless
you're cash flow like they used to.
Basically, if you're just not going to if you're going to take nothing out of it and work off farm, or the farm's big enough that you can do that, the building will pay for itself, but it won't give you hardly any income.
The hog building for a long time was the
ticket.
It was the ticket to get into farming for a while. I mean, it really was. I mean, a bunch of young people were able to just build hog buildings because they cash flow so well, work kind of part-time jobs, or they could work on the farm that their family farm, build the hog barn, and then they can do the hog barn chore, make a little bit of money there, and make a little bit of money farming with their dad or whatever. But now it's not that way anymore.
The labor side of it, because that doesn't work, like in our situation, we're lucky that I'm not so feeble, but I can't still help, and you're here. But when we need extra help for us to load or to do different things, we really got two people.
Yeah, we got two guys.
There's two people that we can call, and other than that, we don't know. There isn't anybody. There isn't anybody. And I mean, that's not to say there aren't other people doing it, but usually their schedules don't work, or if they're involved in the hog business and they're not working with the same pigs that we're working with, the whole biosecurity thing, you can't go back and forth.
Right.
And so it makes it really, really hard. And that part of it's not going to get any easier. And if you go to the farrowing side, if you go to the guys that have the sows that are farrowing pigs, the labor is just, it's unbelievable. Immigration is a huge deal in the ag labor business because so much of the agricultural labor is seasonal. And you just can't find people that have the flexibility to work a month out of the year, 2 months out of the year. And that's where you get the TN visa program, where basically you bring immigrants in to work for a couple months and then they go home. But then also in the hog business, they've used that TN visa program because so many of these towns in rural America, there isn't people there that aren't working in a town further away. There's just not the population, and then the population that's there, they're not willing to work in those settings.
The problem is not a lot of young people are learning about agriculture. And then on top of that, this generation, my generation, they don't want to work. You don't know what farming is like. You don't know what farm life is if you weren't born into it, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, if I didn't see you work as hard or grandpa's work as hard, I would have, you kind of get used to it. You know what it takes. But someone that knows nothing about it and has been grown up in a suburb, and then they want to try to be a farmer, and they come and they go the first day and they're like, well, screw this. This is actually like hard.
Yeah.
This is actually hard. So then there's a lack of knowledge on even getting in and knowing what the hell you're doing. And then if you do get in, the people that get in and that have never been in ag before, I think a lot of them quit because they realize, shit, this isn't as what it's dreamed up to be.
Right. And the wages are driven up, but still you're competing against every other entry level position, whether it be fast food or working in a warehouse or whatever. But when it comes to labor, that's been very slow. But I think you're going to see as much stuff automated as you can. And
well, you have to. I mean, it's getting to the point where we're going to have to do that.
Yeah. And I'll give you an example, like power washing. There are people, and they're already out, but I mean, it's going to have to get refined more. But there's people that are selling programmable
automatic power washers,
where you bring it in a room and say you've got a farrowing house and you've got 16 rooms that you're farrowing, and so you're farrowing pigs every week. You're moving pigs out. You're moving pigs out every week, and then you're loading it every week. Somewhere in there, they come in and they
program it.
Have somebody actually wash it with the wand that is the machine, and it learns. Basically, it's a very rudimentary AI, but it learns all those motions, and then you set it. And every room you take it in, which in the hog business, everything is pretty repetitive as far as every room is going to be set up exactly the same. It's the same number of crates. The inlets are in the same place. The feed line runs in the same place. It's all the same.
Everything.
Feeders are all the same. And then that machine basically they just wheel it in there and they start it and they let it go. And then, it may be a deal where somebody's coming in to
check on it,
to clean up afterwards. There may be some details. There may be some feeders that need to be flipped or something that needs to be flipped.
Well, the great thing with that too is you can probably run that thing as many times as you need to be. As a one person power washing, you wash it. Like for me, when we wash our barns, you wash down and you wash back.
Yep.
With that, you can have it wash down and back 2 or 3 times if you needed it to.
Yeah.
That's the beautiful thing with it. If you have to come in 5 hours later and hit the button to do it again, do it again. But those advancements need to happen not only in the hog business, but probably the cattle business. I don't know much about cattle, but I'm sure there's some automations that need to happen there. And I mean, like you said, grain farming, I feel like they're pretty on top of things as far as automation. They're going at the rate that they need to be.
Yeah.
And I think when people think farming, that's what they think is, big equipment running and all that stuff. But that's the other thing that I think is kind of on the come up is Dad and I have talked about this. We think that in the future, as far as equipment goes, we don't necessarily know if it's going to get to be where it's bigger. Like they're coming out with the new big old combine, big old tractor every year. Maybe it gets to a point where you get 4 little small tractors that run on your iPad automatically with nobody in the cab, and they're just planting or they're tilling with a 2-row, 4-row planter, 4-row planter, and you just let them all go.
Yeah. Well, there's a company. What's that called? Sabano. I'm going to slaughter their name. I should reach out to them. And I think they've got 4 or 5. Are they Kubotas? I think they're Kubotas. And they've been going the last 3 or 4 years across the Midwest in spring and in fall, and they do tillage or they plant. I think they got 4-row planters and then, small implements, but they're totally autonomous. They come and they geofence it, and they load the maps onto the software, onto the computer of the tractor, and it just goes. And you've seen these, they call them like swarm drones that spray. So instead of having a 90-foot boom on a big sprayer, maybe you're going to spray, maybe you got somebody that comes that's just got 25 of these drones that they fill them up and they just go and do a field. And the technology gets better to where they don't spray the whole field. They're just looking, they're literally looking, and they've got the photography so good, and they're referencing every frame that they take to see if there's anything there that doesn't look like a bean plant or a corn plant, and they're deciding if they're going to spray that or they're not going to spray it. And then even a step further, you've seen in a lot of these vegetable farms, guys working on these robots that they go in and they instead of spraying, they're actually tilling where there's a weed. It just goes in and it tills that one spot. So there's no limit, I don't think, as far as what the technology can achieve. I think the issue is going to be, where's the price point got to be that these farms can make it work financially. And then that gets to the idea, is there going to be any place for the small farmer as we go down this road?
And I think ultimately the consumer wants the small family farm. I mean, it's back to what you said. Everybody wants the farmer in the field plowing with the, their hoe, and that's the picture of the American farmer. But like, if this stuff keeps going the rate that it's going, we got to have all this technology, we got to do all these practices this way, and the inputs this much. It's like, it's hard. They want that small farmer, they want the small family farm, but
they don't want to pay for it.
They don't want to pay for it.
Well, and the other side of that, I think the thing that may save these small farms is, well, a little bit of what we're doing, in the fact that you're not getting the smaller farmers are not going to be able to just strictly row crop, or even in our case, I don't think you're going to be able to just contract feed cattle, hogs, turkeys, chickens, whatever. You're going to have to
get creative.
You're going to have to get creative, and you're going to have to set yourself apart from the rest, and you're going to have to find something, whether it be direct to consumer, or one thing that I've been really curious about is there's been a lot of talk about, carbon credits, and I'm pretty skeptical about that, just because most of the programs that are out there, the way they're doing it, and we're not going to go into, if you don't know anything about what a carbon credit is, I'm not going to try to explain it to you, other than you're doing the same thing as when Tesla comes out on their earnings and they made this many $100 million or $1 billion, I don't know how much they made, from selling carbon credits to Chrysler. So in other words, Chrysler doesn't make hardly any electric cars, and when they sell them in Europe, they have to somehow offset the amount of carbon that they're doing. So they buy carbon credits from Tesla because they're making electric vehicles, and they got oodles of carbon credits. Well, it's the same way for farmers. If you were tilling your ground, when you turn that soil over, it releases carbon. If you switch from tilling your ground to no tilling it, you've now
eliminated the amount of carbon that
you've dropped the amount of carbon that you're doing. And somehow they measure that. And so it's not very much. So on an acre, best you could do, you might be able to sequester a ton or one carbon credit. I don't know if that's a ton. Let's just say that's a ton of carbon. And you get one credit for that. Well, most of the programs that are out there today, they're going to pay you for that carbon credit. And it might be $15 an acre or a ton.
$15 a carbon credit that you...
And that's just, I'm pulling that number out from underneath my hat. I mean, I don't know. It might be 10, it might be 20. It's somewhere in there. But what they're doing, and I don't know if all of them are doing this, but most of them, they're taking that and then they're not turning around and selling that in the market. They're speculating on it because they all think that in the future those carbon credits are going to be worth more money. So they bought it from you for $15. They may not sell it to anybody for 5 years. In 5 years, maybe it's worth $40. Maybe it's worth $80. Maybe it's only worth $20. Maybe the whole thing blows up in their face. So they are taking some risk, but you're not getting the option. Now I think there's somebody out there that's starting a deal. I listened to a podcast. It might be FBN that's doing it, where they split it with you, and then you hold the carbon credit. You pay them the fees, what it takes to get it on the exchange, and then you decide when you're going to sell it. Long story short, it's not a get rich quick thing, but it got me thinking, and I've thought this for a while. How long are we going to keep raising just generic, number 2 yellow corn, and it all just gets dumped at the river or at the feed mill or whatever, and none of it's any different than any other? I wonder if we're going to get to the point where some of these end users want the traceability because of the social side of it.
Consumers.
Quaker Oats wants to be able to go to their consumer and be able to show them that farmer with his pitchfork or his hoe and say that, part of the oats that's in your oats came from this guy and it's so-and-so. And whether or not it'll go back to, or not go back, but whether we'll get to the point where you may, depending on the soil you have, depending on your tillage practices, depending on, what you're doing, you may raise your soybean crop for this company.
Person. Yeah.
And not raise it for
generic, per the way it's been doing so far. Yeah, I think that's something easy. I feel like that is on the rise. Consumers want to know where their food comes from.
Yeah.
And it's a trend that just keeps going up and up and up. People want to know. People want to see that, and that's a big reason why we started this.
Yeah.
We've talked about it. We want to show people our day-to-day lives as farmers and what we do and our practices, because this whole privacy thing, people want to be private, all this stuff, but they're taking everything you search online. Their companies are taking your data. There's no privacy anymore. Let's just be honest with ourselves. There's no privacy. So you might as well get on it now while you still can. Show people what's going on. Show them the why and the how they do things. And if it does go that way, we're going to be in, I would like to say, a pretty decent position. If somebody came to us, I don't know, Johnsonville, what is the sausage?
Johnsonville
Brats came to us and was like, hey, we see what you're doing, and we want you to be our mascot for what we put on our box. I definitely think that might be coming.
or they're going to come and go. We want to make sure that whoever we're getting it from, we don't want them to be anything like you two idiots. And we kind of skipped over that, but talking to that direct to consumer, I think you're seeing that way more on the animal side.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's
because it's easier to do. But the meat producers, they're getting it from all sides. There's a big push right now as far as they want to make sure the line speed stays slower in these packing plants because it's a labor issue. They think that it all happened because of COVID. They slowed the line speed down and they spaced everything out. Well, now then they don't want, and when I say they, government, there's a bill, and I can't remember where it came from, but basically they don't want to speed back up, which basically hurts your capacity, which in turn hurts your amount of throughput, which in turn raises your cost, which lowers what the producer can get for his pork, and it raises the price that the consumer pays for it. It's always amazing to me how government can't seem to do basic math. It doesn't matter what it is, but they like to regulate things and tax things. And they can never, I don't care whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or an independent, because in my mind, if you take any politicians and you put them in a wash machine and you pull them out, you can't tell one from the other, because by the time you get to the federal government, if you tell me that you have my best interest in mind, I know that you're lying, because you don't. You're a career politician, and I change my mind. I don't know any of them that...
Yeah, both. I think both, and especially the last 2 years.
Yeah.
I think everybody can somewhat agree with that.
Everything's in degrees. There's some that are a few degrees better than others, but...
It's back to what you said in one of our podcasts. Everybody wants a payday, and especially the politicians. They have someone's in their wallet. Someone's giving them a little bit of money to do something. So,
but in that case, they're going to regulate something, and then because of the regulation, the guy that produces the product that gets processed, he's going to get less for his money, or he's going to get less money for his product. He's going to get less money for his raw material. The guy that produces the product is going to have a higher cost
to produce that product. So his margin, as far as what he makes, is worse. And whatever he's paying people today, he's going to try to pay them less, or find a way or future, he's going to automate, so he needs fewer people to pay. So he's going to have less jobs available. And then because he spent that money, the price that he's willing to sell it for is going to be higher, and the price you pay for it's going to be higher. So I don't see how anybody wins in that situation, because the worker didn't win, because yes, the line speed went down. Slowed down, and that's probably safer, and that's probably good for not spreading COVID or whatever, but all the repercussions that you just explained.
You got less jobs, and everything
people are getting paid
more.
Less. The people that produce the product get paid less. The consumer has to pay more.
Yeah. And that's just a very tiny example of a lot of things that government does for us, because they're here to help. An offshoot of that is, you've seen a lot of people go direct to consumer. And if you go to farmers markets, have gotten to be huge around the country, and people like that direct to consumer. And it's because people, as you said, they want to know where their food came from. And when they do know where their food comes from.
And I also just think it's not just knowing where it came from, it's knowing the person that produced it.
Yeah.
Knowing who the farmer is. If you can, when you meet somebody, and if they say that they're a farmer and they're trying to sell you their food that they created, you'll be able to, you read that person. If you think they're a dick, you're probably not going to buy it. If you think that they're a good person, they genuinely care, they're probably take care of their animals the same way. I think that's another big thing that people like to miss. They like to say where they want to know where their food comes from, but I think people also want to know who the farmer is that's producing the food.
Yeah. So on our direct to consumer products, there's just going to be a picture of me, because we're going to play the pity card. We're hoping that whatever they look at that package and they see me, they're going to be like, boy, he
needs some help.
He needs some help. We'll buy this, try to help him out. So anyway, we kind of jumped all over the place on ag. I am very optimistic.
I don't think there's a better, I don't think there's a better time to be alive.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's going around the world as far as just this last couple years was just crazy. I think another big part of the reason that people think it's as bad as it is because we're constantly getting fed information every day, every second, every minute. You're constantly reading things.
Yeah.
Back in the day, you didn't know if it was that bad or not, and it wasn't hyped up to be as bad as it was.
Well, you only had an hour of news. You had the news, so we came in and we listened to WMT over the noon hour, and most of that was the big show. Or before, I don't know if it's always been the big show, but when I was a kid, you listened to WMT, and you had 10 minutes of news, and then at 5:30 you watched Walter Cronkite. And once in a great while, if something was really bad, they would break in, and you would have a special report, and you knew, boy, this is a big deal. But you didn't have the 24-hour news cycle. And the sad part about it is, news is no different than social media. They're trying to feed you that dopamine hit. But
the crazy headlines, the crazy pictures, the crazy videos, everything.
And news has figured out that feel-good stories rarely get them ratings. And so it's all bad all the time. And it doesn't matter who it is. Every news outlet out there, it's all bad pretty much. And now there's different culprits. If you're watching CNN or you're watching Fox, it can be the same bad thing, but the reason that it happened, it's two different bad guys, but it's all bad. Mm-hmm. And when you get spoon-fed that every day, you're not going to be very positive about the future. And I just try not to go off of that.
Yeah. There's a few news sites and places that are trying to go completely opposite because I think they're listening to people and saying, I don't trust the fake news. I mean, you call it fake news because both sides are just doing exactly that. And there's these news companies that just want to do unbiased media, unbiased news like it used to be. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of people that are starting to try to do that, which is good because I'll follow those people. Yeah. I don't care. But as far as not to shit on everybody's parade there and make them feel crappy, I still say that there's no better time to be alive because there's so much opportunity.
Yeah.
The fact that I can do my day job as far as farming and then go home and work on a side hustle to produce more income for me and make an impact on the world. My grandpa didn't have that.
No.
You didn't have that growing up.
No.
There's so much opportunity. You can go on Amazon and sell things. You can create a product faster than you could ever create a product. You can reach more people than you've ever been able to reach, or you can learn information that like you've never been able to learn information ever. You got to look on the bright side of things, but you just got to be a hustler nowadays. I think you got to be resourceful. You got to be a hustler, and there's never been more opportunity than there is right now.
But I don't even know how to. Well, I'll just give an example. When we're talking about the future, I saw a post. Somebody was going on a rant about electric vehicles. They were going off on Tesla, and Tesla's had some bad publicity of late. There was a crash in Texas that the first thing they said was that the autopilot was on, and people like, well, that shouldn't be legal. You shouldn't be able to do that. Well, come to find out, the autopilot wasn't turned on. But there's another crash in California. I think they're investigating that. I think autopilot may have been on in that one, and so they make the car becomes the villain, and not only the car. We saw the same thing when SUVs, when we thought that we were going to run out of oil, and the oil price got high. You would see stories where an SUV killed 4 people. It wasn't the person driving this car; it was the SUV killed 4 people because SUVs were the devil because they burned all this gas. Well, now you've kind of seen. They talk about electric vehicles catching on fire, and electric vehicle, Tesla Model S kills 2 people or whatever. But you can resist a technology, and you can pull up articles about. I think I just saw it today on LinkedIn, an article, and I think it was in Newsweek or Time Magazine, and they literally said that a lot of people are turning their back on the internet, and they thought the internet was going to die because it's just not what it was cracked up to be, and people are turning away from it. They're not using it. Well, that didn't age very well, and we can say, and I've seen a lot of arguments about how dirty how dirty the battery process is for building batteries for electric vehicles, and how electric vehicles, if you figure in all of the stuff that goes into the battery, that they're not nearly as good for the environment as what people say they are. But usually when they quote those, they're talking about the batteries that went into the first version of the Chevy Bolt, or the first version of Tesla when they made the Roadster, or when they first made the Model S. And they don't talk about the technology we have today, or the technology that's coming with the next generation, the 4680 battery, and how much better it is, and how exponentially fast it's getting more efficient, and it's getting better for the environment. And I'm going somewhere with this. I'm just using this as an example. You cannot stop the train of change. Change is coming. And every single person, you need to decide if you are going to
Get on the train or get ran over.
Yep, and that's 100% right, because by 2030, it's 2021. I'll guarantee you by 2030, there won't be very many people left that are going, yeah, these electric cars just aren't going to catch on. The ship has already sailed, and it's already a foregone conclusion that is the way the world is going to go. And it's not only going to affect cars, it's going to affect semis, and then it costs you roughly 4 cents a mile. I think, oh boy, somebody will correct me on these numbers, but if you're hauling freight on a train, I think you can haul freight on a train somewhere around 3.5 cents a loaded mile. It could be a little bit, just use these numbers for argument's sake. I think it's 3.5 cents a loaded mile. And if you're trucking, it costs about, I want to say it costs maybe 6 or 8 cents a loaded mile. It's a healthy enough gap that if you're moving large amounts of stuff, coal, steel, lumber, it makes sense to run it on a train. The problem with that train is you've got to pick it up in Los Angeles, Omaha, Chicago, Baltimore, and then you got to haul it the last however many miles to get it there. That's where, if with a truck, it's a little more efficient because you don't have to offload it on the train. Okay, if you take and you put an electric semi, and electric semis are going to be there, and you put that semi in a tunnel, and you pressurize the tunnel, and you take it from Los Angeles, California to Omaha, you can do it for about 2 cents, 2 or 2.5 cents a loaded mile. You can't do that today. The technology's not there. The tunnel's not there. But the tunnel's perfected.
Elon's boring the tunnels.
They're going to make the tunnel. When that happens, the amount of people that are going to be displaced and the amount of money that is going to be made on one side and lost on the other side is huge. It's insane. And people, if you just listen to this part, you're, boy, that guy, he is crazy. He really is crazy. That's just an example.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people, when they're like, it's just like farmers, when they hear electric cars, they automatically think, oh, no ethanol. We're not going to sell our corn for ethanol because there's not going to be such a demand for ethanol. It's like, well, what are you going to do about it?
Right.
You can't do anything about it. If the world goes that way, you better have a plan, because it's going to happen regardless.
Yeah, and
so you can either sit there and say, screw electric cars, screw where the world's going, but the world doesn't care. The world doesn't care where you're at. So you can either do something about it or stay there, and in 9-10 years, you're going to get hit in the face, and you're going to be like, shit, I should have done something about it.
Yeah, and all I'll say about the ethanol deal is this. You are competing against oil, but you need the combustion engine to burn that ethanol to make it viable. But it's only viable at a price point if oil stays above a certain rate. It's just like fracking. Fracking is only viable as long as oil stays, I don't know, $60 a barrel, $40 a barrel, whatever it is. But the world is not going to go entirely electric overnight, but here's what's going to happen. You're going to get enough consumer vehicles, passenger vehicles, switched to electric, that if you erode 2, 3, 4% of the world's oil consumption, the price collapses. Because the margin that the Saudis are making on that oil, they can only sustain that if they're pumping it like they are pumping it. And if demand goes away,
3-4%, they're screwed.
The price collapses. Because Russia, a lot of the people that pump oil, they aren't very good fiscally. I mean, the whole world's not very good fiscally. But the only way they've got money to keep things going is keep pumping oil. The Russians are going to keep pumping all the oil they can. The Saudis are going to keep pumping all the oil they can. Venezuela is going to keep pumping all the oil it can. So when it happens, when it gradually happens, there's no stopping that price. That price is going to collapse. And when it does collapse...
and everybody thinks that they don't think that's going to happen because they don't realize it only needs to be 3-4%.
Yeah.
Everyone wants the big picture. Oh, it's not going to all go away. The price is just going to drop, it's not.
You're going to burn jet fuel. You're going to burn diesel. You're going to burn... These ships in the ocean, they're going to burn diesel. All that's going to be there. But the thing is, the consumer market is going to push it. And the reason it is because you've got the president we have now. He wants to give everybody, what is it, $1,700 to buy an electric vehicle. And the price of a Tesla Model 3 versus a Toyota Corolla, it's almost a wash right now. And we can argue about, the cost of ownership and this and that. But the truth is the price is going to just keep going down. And I fully predict, and you can come back and check this video, check this video 2 years ago and send me a message, or 2 years from now, as the battery technology gets better, because the battery is the biggest cost involved in building that car. As that technology gets better, the price drops exponentially.
Because they have nothing. There's nothing else in the electric car. That's the most expensive part of an electric car.
That's right.
If the battery drops, the cost of them to make it.
So you're almost at parity now. And when that gets flipped to where you can buy an electric car cheaper, you can buy a gas car, and the government's going to give you money to buy it, it's done. I'm a little passionate about that. But the other thing I think that's going to change is, and COVID sped this up, but people working from home, I don't think we're ever going back. I think commercial real estate is in really bad shape, and I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. I think commercial real estate will probably be the Achilles heel that kills the real estate market. I think it will finally drag down this ultra hot real estate market, because these companies that have these big office buildings, they figured out it is way cheaper. It is way cheaper to let everybody work from home. And then, as we talked about, the amount of knowledge that's out there that you can pick up, that you can learn, the amount of freelancing.
Freelancing. Yeah, that's a big one. I mean, as you guys know, we're doing the podcast, we're doing the YouTube, and then we try to post-produce all the content we make on TikTok, Instagram, all that stuff. That's kind of our strategy as far as content creation goes. That's a lot of editing for Dad and I. We do a lot of editing. So I was looking up on Fiverr and Upwork, because these are some freelancing websites, and I was just going through there, and I'm looking for someone to hire. So if you got video editing skills and you're a farm kid, which that's going to be a hard criteria to fill, but hopefully I can find someone sometime. Shoot me a message. But anyway, I was looking for work because I'm interested in finding someone, and I remember just scrolling through there, and over the past 2 years, all the stuff that I've learned, because I use the internet to learn it, I was looking at these people, and they were charging $500 a day for a 10-hour day. I'm like, holy shit, I could make probably $10,000 in a single month with the skills that I have right now.
I threw the breaker in the garage for the Starlink so that he could get off, because I don't want him to get any funny ideas and wander off the farm.
I won't do that. We already got a good thing going, but that's touching on your subject. Freelancing is becoming a huge thing. I think people want to work for themselves. I think a lot more people are wanting to work for themselves. They want to work at home. They want to have time with their kids. And if you're not going to be an entrepreneur that starts a business, you can become a freelancer. You can learn skills to become a freelancer. And that's huge. So
yeah. And so where I was going when I started before that rant, I was talking about how people are getting sold. Like, I feel like the government isn't telling you the whole story, because these politicians all want to get up and kiss babies and tell you how all these great high-paying jobs, but it's going to be a lot different. It's going to be a lot different than what your parents were or your grandparents were. Now, I do feel like we figured out that there is a lot of stuff that we're not making here in America today that we need to be. And we talked about, just like the chip shortage, that needs to come back home. And there's a lot of that stuff that is. But so much of that manufacturing, it's all going to be automated.
3D printing.
Yeah.
All that stuff. Everyone's trying to... There's some companies out there that are trying to 3D print the living crap out of everything.
Yeah, I mean, and take the gigapress. I'm sorry, I got to go back to Tesla again, but they're making the back end of a Model Y, and I think there was over 100 pieces of metal that were welded together, and they cast that all in one piece. Okay, not only does that eliminate some jobs, it eliminates a pile of machines that they were using to weld that. And that's just one example.
That's what they call the gigapress?
Yeah.
Did Tesla invent that?
No, there's a company in Italy
that created it.
And they made smaller ones. And Tesla went to them and said,
"We want them.
Could you make one of these that presses 6 tons?" And they were like, "What?" And they said, "Well, nobody's ever asked, but I think we can." And so the biggest one that they had ever made, they made an 8-ton that is going to make the chassis of the Cybertruck, and it's in Austin in that plant. But they just got an order, and nobody knows what it's for. People are speculating that it is for the entire chassis and the body of the really cheap car that they're trying to perfect in China that they want to sell for like $20,000. Because if they can do that,
everyone's going to buy it.
They're going to make a killing. But anyway, they're building a 9-ton press, and nobody knows what it's for because they built 6s. But anyway, they took that process and they went from making the back. When the 2 new factories come, they're going to make the back end of the car, the front end of the car, and then the chassis with the batteries integrated into that chassis in one box. And they're going to have 3 presses that make that. And instead of welding together what would basically be probably 400 pieces of metal, if there's 150 or so in the back, 150 in the front, that's 300 and whatever in the middle. It's literally going to be 3 pieces. You know how much money that's going to save them? It's not only...
in the efficiency.
Yeah, it's just insane. But they're not the only ones doing this. This is what technology is changing. 3D printing, the efficiency. And then on top of that, people are going to freelance. And these companies, they're going to be willing to pay you very well, but you're going to be responsible for your own retirement. You're going to be responsible for your own insurance. You're going to be responsible for all that stuff because they're going to offload that on you. They're willing to pay you very well, but the difference is the safety net where these people that grew up going to work for a company and you work there, you put your 20 years in, you get your pension, all that's not coming back. That's not coming back. And I think that's why there's so much talk about universal basic income.
Yeah, that's right.
And the reason they're talking about that is because they know, they aren't selling it this way, but they know
that's coming.
There's going to be a group of people
that are going to get pushed out
because they don't, and that's where, how long are we? Because we could go into the education side because there's a group of people that are not going to have the skills that they need for the jobs that are going to be available because the economy is going to change at such a rapid rate that they're going
to automate so much of the stuff that they won't need the people. And then those people won't have the skills to level up and go get the jobs that are needed for humans to be doing.
Right.
And then they're going to be sitting on their butt and not know what the hell they do. They either go to college, they either learn some stuff online, and they become a freelancer.
Right.
So learn some skills. Some skills.
And I'm not pretending to have the answers. And this is not going to be a utopia. I guarantee it's not going to be a utopia. Take your sunglasses off and you really look. If you just sit and you really think about the future and what technology, the way it's pointing, you start to come to some conclusions that it's not going to stay the same, which you knew that to start with. But there's going to be huge opportunities and there's going to be huge perils for certain industries and for a lot of individuals. And I'll be honest, when it comes to the ag side of things, I don't know where that's going to be. Like, do I think in Do I think in 10 years that I'm still going to have pigs in our hog buildings? Yeah, I think we will. Now, will all our 2,400 head finishers still hold 2,400 head, or will we only be putting 2,000 pigs in there? And will we be covering up part of the slats because we've got to put hay in there? Or we're raising some kind of a pig that we raise fewer pigs, but they're a lot bigger. Or we feed more pigs and they're smaller because the market is a niche.
Or the whole building design gets changed. Maybe we have these buildings built a certain way that
right
they're going to need to get changed
maybe
to be more efficient or whatever, or less pigs in a pen, whatever.
Maybe we have 3 times the solar panels and we're just growing pot like it's going out of style.
Yeah, everybody always asks us that in the YouTube comments. They're like, what are you going to do when these hog barns get outlawed and you're not going to be able to do anything?
We're going to raise pot.
And I said, you know what? You know what I say to them? I'm like, you know what? We'll probably figure it out, but worst comes to worst, we'll probably turn it into a greenhouse.
Yeah.
Cannabis.
Yeah.
Cannabis greenhouse.
Yeah.
I mean, a hog barn literally is slats, walls, curtains, a roof. And
it's a big building that if the right opportunity is there, I guess what I'm saying is, I said 10 years. I think in 10 years, we'll still be raising pigs in them.
Yeah.
20 years from now,
it's going to be my responsibility.
I have no idea what problems Sawyer will have, but I know it won't be my problem. He'll be calling me. Hopefully I'm on a small island somewhere.
Yeah, I'll have to come up with the solutions, but yeah.
But the thing is, you got to keep your eyes open, and you cannot dig in your heels and say, nope, not going to do it. Don't care, not going to do it. Because if you have that attitude, yeah, you won't be doing it.
Another thing that I think is coming is I think the banking system's going to be screwed.
Oh, gosh.
We didn't touch on this. This is a big one for us. The way that I truly think that the way we're going with this cryptocurrency, and some of you might be rolling your eyes, but this digital currency thing, it's faster, it's more efficient, it's safer. The data, all the data that they have on the blockchain, it's so like data driven and so safe. Like they have everything in one block, and then I forget how it all works.
Yeah.
But
that's the upside of it is the clarity and the security is excellent, but that's not what's going to change it. It's like everything. The economics are what's going to change it. So today, you go to any big city, any small town, and one of the cornerstones of a community, what's the nicest buildings in about any town you go to? Bank. They build these banks, and they're all very nice. And they get people to bring their money, and they pay them a little bit. You know, when I was a kid, you used to be able to get, I don't know, 10% on your savings account. I remember my grandpa gave me a CD once, like a $2,000 CD. And I want to say that it was like 14% interest or something like that when I was in grade school. But it was a terrible time to be farming, of course. But if you're a kid and if you were a retired person, you had money in the bank, it was wow, because the interest rate kept up with your cost of living. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. I was only like 7 or 8, so I don't know. But interest was high. But today, you don't make anything. And I read somewhere that for a bank to get a customer, so by the time they give them incentive to open an account there and the cost of building the bank in that town and the ATMs and all the stuff, that I can't remember if this is over their lifetime or whether this is what they figure it costs them to get a customer. But it's like $1,500 or $3,000. Do you know what it costs PayPal or Square?
Yeah, that's the other thing. I didn't even touch on that.
To get a customer?
Not only digital currency, but these other platforms.
So if you're not familiar with PayPal or Square, they're both digital mechanisms where you can pass money between people and you can pay for products. So PayPal Elon Musk started PayPal, and then he sold it, and that's how he started Tesla. But anyway, PayPal was kind of the pioneer of this. And is PayPal owned by Google now?
It might be.
I don't know if it is or not. But anyway, PayPal, they've been around longer. And so, you can buy about anything on the internet and you can pay for it with PayPal, which it's linked to a bank account or it's linked to a credit card, but it has really good security. And so if somebody screws you, it's kind of like an in-between between your bank account and these people to where you've got a buffer so you're kind of protected. But then they've also gotten into, they have a service called Venmo, which is on your phone, where if we buy a pizza and we want to split the price, Sawyer
or
pays.
You pay for it, and then I just Venmo you.
And then Venmo.
Because I don't have any cash I don't have cash.
And it's very popular with younger people. And then Square is the people that brought, if you've ever been somewhere that flea market or you've been to a restaurant
and the little iPad, and you have that white thing plugged into their iPad, and you swipe the card on there.
That's Square. And a lot of businesses use that, and it's convenient, and they handle all the transaction fees, and then all the money that you bring in, they once a day or once a week, depending on how you set it up, then they slide that money into a brick and mortar bank account. Then they also have a card, and it's called Cash App. And
so Square owns the Cash App.
Yep, and Cash App's just like Venmo. Okay, their cost to get a customer is like $25. Like it's nothing compared to a bank. And so my other son, he has a business. He does real estate, but then he does real estate photography, and he uses Cash App. And
he uses Square.
He uses Square.
We also use Cash App, but he uses Square Square to run his business.
So where both of these examples are a lot different than a brick and mortar bank. If you decide that you want to go borrow money from a bank, and I go into the bank and I say, I want to buy this hog building. That's a poor example. I want to buy this.
I want to buy a house, or I want to I want a business loan.
Yeah, I want a business loan. I want a $25,000, $30,000 line of credit. They're going to tell you, okay, I need the last 3 years' tax returns. I need this, 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 and this. Fill this sheet out.
I'm going to have to sit down with my supervisors, go over it for a week. And
the bank board meets next Tuesday. And if you're lucky, they meet next Tuesday, and that's if you're at a small town bank. If you're at Citibank, it's going to be 30 days.
And if you're a Gen Zer like me, you don't got time for that.
No.
You want it now.
It doesn't.
Everybody wants it now. So.
Okay. So my son, Sawyer's brother, that uses Square, because they have the info, all of the people that are paying him, all those transactions are going through their service. They see how much money he's making, and then he's buying stuff using his Cash App card. All of those transactions are flowing through their system, and they're using machine learning. They're using AI. They're using really powerful computing software. And they're looking at it. They already know
how much Clay's making.
Yeah, they know what he's making.
Yeah, that's my brother Clay. Clay is my brother.
Shout out
to Clay.
Shout out to Whistler Studios. If you need a house sold or you need some photography done for a house you're trying to sell,
hit up Clay Whistler.
Yeah, hit up Clay Whistler.
Whistler Studios too.
Yep. Anyway, they will literally reach out to him and they will offer him. They'll say, "Hey,
we see that you're profitable.
Yeah, you're making
6
money.
Months.
Do you need any extra money to run your business?" And this isn't like one of those deals that you used to get in the mail that be like, "How would you like a personal loan of up to this many $1,000?" And the fine print is it's 18.9%. No, this is just like a bank loan where it's at, whatever current rates are. But because they have the data and they're using it so efficiently, they already know the businesses that are out there that are profitable and that are making money, and they want to
reach out to you.
Right.
They don't wait for you to go to them and ask for money. They're willing to email you and say, "We see that you're making this money. We will lend you this amount of money on these terms," or whatever.
Yeah. Do you need money for stock? Do you need money for equipment? Whatever. And the reason they're doing that is they want to head them off at the pass before they go to that brick and mortar bank. And today, that's kind of in its infancy, but you're going to see that it is absolutely going to decimate.
The thing with Square is like they do the Cash App thing where we can transfer money back and forth between friends.
Yeah.
Then they own the lending side of the business. So they're lending people money and having people use their software to help their business. And the biggest thing, and if you're older, you might not get this as much, but young kids, millennials, Gen Zers, we want it now because we've always had it now. We can have any information we want at our fingertips in a second.
Yeah.
That is becoming so important to people. We want it now. It's the same thing. That's why we're getting Alexas in everybody's house. Everybody wants an Alexa. Alexa's going to get to the point where it's going to become a chore to get on your phone
and Google it
and type using your fingertips to type something in when you can just go, Alexa, search this. It's going to, and it's all about time. And if you get to the point where Square can loan you that in a day, I don't have to wait for the bank to go have their meeting next week. I don't have to give them, have to go find my tax returns because they're already in the system. They already know.
Yeah.
They have it all there. So I can literally at the snap of my fingers probably have a loan that same day if I wanted it.
Yeah.
And that's super important to people.
It's kind of scary. I mean, it's.
So if I was a young person, and don't get mad at me if you work at a bank, but I don't know. I don't know what the future of banks will be, but they better get on their high horse and they need to get the data from the customers or the people that they're serving. Because if they don't have the data and they don't start reaching out to people, hey, we'll loan you this X amount of money. It's always been banks is where you go get money, and that's just how it's been.
Yeah.
But if somebody comes out and Square is coming out and they're saying, we'll give you money.
Yeah.
We're going to give you money. It's like they're generating leads from themselves almost.
Right. Yeah.
And banks haven't been doing that because they didn't need to, but they better start if they're going to make it.
Along these lines, I had this very conversation with my ag lender. So, my ag lender that I have my buildings financed through, my operating's through, lands, everything's through them. They started a program where they were helping people with their farm financials with their record keeping. And I really liked their program. In fact, I'm still using the program. They were working with it through a third-party provider, and then they were subsidizing it and all that. And I really liked it, and they got rid of it. And the reason they got rid of it was because they had less than 30% adoption rate of their customers. Less than 30 out of 100 people had any interest in it or stayed on it or did it. And, they had the people in there to support it and do all that, and they left it. And I told them I thought that was a mistake because in my mind, the 30 people out of 100 that probably were doing that, those 30 people were going to be their customers for life. And those other people may not be in business.
Well, yeah, and here's the other thing. If those 30 people have kids, I would probably use that service now because we're younger generations. We've grown up with technology. Yeah. I don't know, I think
when I explained to them that whole premise about offering to loan them money
and owning the data,
having the data, they were just like, ooh. At first they were like, wow, that's really neat. And then they sat there and they thought about it for a minute and they were like, that doesn't bode well.
He asked you, the interest has got to be just stupid on it.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
It's got to be just stupid on it if it's that. And you're like, no, it's basic.
No, it's basically prime
it's the same
plus.
Loan as
it's the same loan that you're given. Yep. It's the same one.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. There's going to be winners and there's losers. And you can take this back. Remember Kodak. And this example gets taught a lot in business school. You take Kodak and you take the digital camera. Kodak had the market. I mean, they owned the film market. And the idea, in their mind, the idea of taking images, that's never going away. That is guaranteed business. And they saw digital photography and they thought, nah, that'll never catch on. And they didn't do it. They had the technology before anybody else. They could have been the dominant player in that if they would have played it right. And they chose to just pass on it. They're out. They're gone. Like Sawyer, you don't even hardly know it. Kodak doesn't mean anything to him.
I mean, I've seen. There's T-shirts that say Kodak on them, like retro T-shirts.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's not a camera out there. I use a damn Sony.
Yeah,
Team Sony.
And so to think that those businesses are here today. Those businesses are here today that believe that that it's never going to change. It's not going to change, that they own it, whatever it is. And you know what? Someday they'll be on a vintage T-shirt and somebody will see, oh yeah, I remember them. Because
and it's the same way with individuals.
Technology is brutal.
Technology's brutal. The world's brutal, and it's not gonna give you a pity party if you don't get on the train. You can get on the train or get ran over. You got to move with the times. You got to adapt the technology and keep your eyes out. We talked about a lot of stuff here. We kind of went on a ramble. This is kind of our. If you guys want to know about Dad and I, we're dreamers, we're schemers. We love thinking about the future, and we love technology and innovation. Even if it, obviously, we recognize that if electric cars became a thing, that the ethanol market would probably be crap, and we probably won't be able to sell our corn for whatever.
But you know what? It goes back to if we do a good enough job marketing our product, if the world of meat production, if they all do a good enough job of knowing their customer and giving them a product that they feel good about and that they enjoy, and they work with content creators, people on social media that own restaurants, that are backyard barbecue guys, that are competition barbecue guys, that are culinary chefs, and they work with those people, we could sell so much meat, we couldn't grow enough corn.
Well, and that too. And 2050, there's supposed to be 50 billion people on this planet. Or 10 billion. 10 billion, not 50.
Yeah.
2050, 10 billion people got 50 billion.
I am not worried at all about not having a market for the crops that we grow. I'm not worried about that at all. To me, ethanol may be here, it may not be, but it doesn't matter, because if we all do a good enough job of telling our story, and the companies that we work with, if they do a good enough job of
adapting what's happening
and staying in touch with their consumer as far as what consumers want, and working with the people that are catering to those consumers and showing them how to use the product that they have, it
ain't going away.
It's going to be profitable for everybody. I'm excited for the future of agriculture. It's a little scary, but I feel good about it.
We're excited about the future ag, and I think we're excited about the future in general as far as, currency. And we didn't really touch on cryptocurrency, but I just always think about this thing. The fact that there's a conversation that the currency that we currently use might not be the currency we use in 20, 30, 50 years. That's mind-blowing in itself. Your grandpa didn't have that opportunity. You don't get that not all generations get that opportunity.
Yeah.
The fact that the currency might change into something and you could get in on it early. That does not happen how many years, hundreds of years does that happen?
Yeah. It doesn't.
It doesn't happen.
Well, and that is truly, we can't go off on this because that's a whole podcast. But when we say the world is running on fiat currency, and fiat currency it's not tied to anything. The world economy, as far as the value of the paper money printed, that money has absolutely no value except that it came from the United States government, it came from Britain, it came whatever that paper is, but it's not tied. They went off the gold standard a long time ago. It's not tied to anything of value. It's only the value that is perceived. So that's fiat. And it creates a lot of problems, and that we have a lot of problems. And cryptocurrency has the opportunity to change that and make currency accountable and make governments accountable. And that too could be very painful, but it also may very well be one of the greatest opportunities that's ever been afforded to the common citizen of the world that there's ever been. And that's all I'm going to say about it, because we could go another hour on that.
Yeah. This was a long one, guys. We understand that. I hope you got some value out of it. We kind of touched on a lot, but we are super optimistic and excited for the future. I mean, we talked about some doom and gloom stuff on here about, the problems that we face right now in ag and in the world or whatever. But all I'll say is keep your eyes open and try to be innovative and look for opportunities, because there's a lot of opportunity coming. There's a lot of opportunity coming. And don't let the media tell you that right now sucks to be a human being, because right now it's really great to be a human being. You have more opportunity than you've ever had. You have more opportunity than your granddad had, than your dad had, than your great grandpa had. I mean, you have so much opportunity. There's so many ways to learn. There's so many new things coming out. Technology is going crazy. So stay optimistic.
Yeah, and I'll say this: as we said, if you watch too much news, you kind of lose. You don't have a lot of faith in your fellow man. One of the best things you can do, and this is easy for my generation and hard for Sawyer's generation, because I don't feel like they have as many social. They don't get out as much. They everything is on here, but. When I go out if I go to church on Sunday morning, or I go and drive down and stop at my neighbor's place, or I walk into the gas station and two farmers that I know are in there, you spend enough time like that, it'll restore your faith in your fellow man. And it's good that we're all kind of getting out from underneath the COVID thing. And you know what? Just get out and walk around your block, and if you don't know your neighbors, introduce yourself. And there's a lot of great people out there, and we were all meant to be together, not apart. And even if there's stuff that we disagree on, there's a hell of a lot we can agree on. And I think the future's bright.
I do too.
So
way to unite them at the end here. Way to rein it in, Dad. That was a good American spirit talk right there.
Yeah.
No, that's true though.
It is.
We need to become. I think the media likes to say that they're trying to make us divided. Don't let them do that. Yeah. We're more alike than we're different. So no matter what skin color you are, you're freaking orange, black, brown, white, no matter what your sexuality is, I mean, you can find common ground with anybody. Yeah. So just find the good in everybody and be looking for the future. Be optimistic. It doesn't do you any good to be negative. Share this with somebody if you got some value, guys. That's all we ask. And let us know in the comments if you want to see some guest on here, because we're working on it. We're working on finding guests. We're shooting some messages here and there. And if you want somebody on here that you enjoy listening to, we'll try to get them on. So with that being said, guys, have a great week. Go find some opportunity.
We'll see you next time.
We'll see you next time.